Welcome to IP Goes Pop, your source for exploring the interface between intellectual property and pop culture. The IP Goes Pop podcast series is created and produced by Volpe Koenig, an intellectual property law firm based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Visit us at vklaw.com. This program should not be considered legal advice. Please consult an attorney for your specific situation. And now your hosts, intellectual property attorneys, Michael Snyder and Joseph Gushue.
Hi, I'm Michael Snyder of Volpe Koenig, back again as your host of IP Goes Pop. Luckily, joined again this week by my co-host, Joseph Gushue. Joe, welcome back.
Hi, Mike. It's great to be back on the podcast and talking to you about the intersection of pop culture and IP again.
Well, it's a really exciting episode and a very interesting topic. This week, we're going to be talking about NFTs and what that means. I know it's a term that people see a lot lately, like crypto, which we're not going to talk about this week, but we might talk about soon. First of all, let me just go through the formalities and a disclaimer. This is not legal advice. If you require legal advice, please seek out an attorney. And with that said, let me set the table a bit to the pre-electronic, pre-internet world, or maybe parallel to, in some cases, world of collectibles. Whether we're talking about baseball cards, or we're talking about Matchbox cars, or we're talking about signed memorabilia, things that are either one of a kind or part of a collection, or maybe you go to eBay and you get a certificate of authenticity that says, you know, this is number 562 out of 1,000 pieces, and there are only ever going to be 1,000 pieces. Joe, I know you were on our episode before about comic books. By the way, besides comic books, were you ever a collector of anything else?
No, limited to comic books, thankfully. My brother was in the coins. But yeah, I was a comic book guy because I liked being able to use what I was collecting. So
Yeah, that's an interesting comment, because there are the collectors who actually will take it out of the package and read the comic book, and there are those that will panic and gasp for air if you even mention opening up one of the packages.
don't even touch it. Yeah, I would always read my comic books and then put them in their bags and boards, put them in my closet and hold on to them. But yeah, people will spend significant money on the graded comic books, never to open it, just simply as an investment vehicle, I guess, or a showpiece that they want to display that they own one of these things.
One time I saw a special on a very rare baseball card. It had serrated edges, and you had to separate the serrated edges to make it for sale. And they showed a kid and his father as they slowly did it, and then someone was sitting there ready to grade it based on how much cardboard was pulled off kind of one of the serrated point edges when you pulled it away, and that would swing this for auction tens of thousands of dollars just for how you separated it. But the thing about collectibles is, I'm trying to think of if I actually accumulated things or collected any. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's what brings us to the forefront with the collections is just in the past year with the pandemic and people no longer going on vacations or spending money in the hospitality business. There's just been an explosion in value of baseball card collections, comic book collections, any sort of memorabilia out there. The prices are skyrocketing because people have all this money that they are not spending that they would normally. And people are purchasing, say, baseball cards as these investment vehicles without even seeing the card, or the card is never near their possession. It's always being held by a third party, and it's just an asset.
Well, when you think about collectibles in that way, and I guess it really depends on who the fan is of the particular collectible, is some of this because there is a transition from the world of print and holding physical objects and actually having it? Because, in the modern world where we now are moving toward a digital type of world, we have this concept of NFTs, or the NFT. And Joe, if you could, can you, and again, we're at a most basic level, but I think a lot of people see the term and want to know what it means. So can you describe a little bit or give the background of what an NFT is? What does it mean? What are they? Where are we coming from?
Yeah, stands for a non-fungible token, the NFT. There was on the Tim Ferriss podcast, someone referred to them as Nifties, um, just saying it instead of each of the letters. And I hope that does catch on because it is a good way to refer to these things. But it's a unique token that is captured on a blockchain. So think of it this way, and I'll go back to the definition. For example, if you have a computer file, you can copy, paste, have multiple copies of that file. What an NFT does is it allows you the ability to just have one copy of that file recorded on the blockchain so that there is only a single verifiable copy of that file. Now, if you compare this with a protocol like Bitcoin, what that does is it allows for the exchange of coins, and they're assigned a value that everyone's agreed upon to have for that Bitcoin. You cannot copy Bitcoins. That's how the protocol is designed and how the whole system's set up. Same thing with NFTs. Instead of a coin itself, what you are doing is taking a digital copy of a file, a song, a GIF, a video, and you are recording it on the blockchain so that there is a limited number of copies of it.
Just to break it down, when you say on the blockchain, what does that mean?
So when talk about blockchain at a high level, it's a digital ledger. So blockchain is a massive computer network, all verifying the same ledger. So think of it as a Excel file that you have. You're able to make different changes on it. You can manipulate it as much as you want. But if we were to take that Excel file and then have a network of computers all monitoring that Excel file, there would be a true copy of that ledger that no one could modify. So it's agreed upon by the cryptography and how these protocols are designed. The term blockchain refers to chains of transactions being linked together so that you can actually go back to the beginning of all these protocols and see every single transaction that ever occurred in a chain, one after another, just links of a chain. And each of those links of a chain have transactions recorded on them. So this can go a lot of different ways, but basically all the computers are competing to solve a puzzle, and that's the mining aspect of things. And then they put a new link on the chain, and then everything else after a number of different transactions is verified, establishing true links of that chain. So the longer it passes in time from you submitting a transaction to the blockchain, think of it like it is a insect sitting on a tree that gets covered in tree sap, and then more and more tree sap is added to it, and it becomes fossilized like amber. That is what each transaction in the blockchain is. So after much time, all the computers are solving later, doing later computations and adding additional transactions to the chain. That's the verified past history of the blockchain, and it continues on as people want to use it more moving forward, adding new links to the chain.
So when you think of the NFT as a unique token on the blockchain, is it possible, like a limited edition, to limit the number that exists? Because when you see some of the prices being paid for some of the NFTs, you would hope, well, that's either completely... I've seen ones that claim to be completely unique, and I assume there would be some kind of electronic receipt when you transfer it to someone else so it stays unique. And I've seen others that are just limited edition, almost like the old school, this is 50 out of 100.
With NFTs, the creator is allowed to decide how they want to set them up. So there can be an original one of one, or you could sell a run of things where there's, say, 50 different copies and they're assigned a number to them. You'll see that as we talk about some of the examples of NFTs that people can purchase nowadays. But it's completely up to the creator how they would like to do it. And then in addition to just one-off NFTs, or say an organization wants to release almost the concept of sporting cards to NFTs, there can be collections released. And then there's also artist collections, which have found their way into pop culture now, and in this sort of crypto Twitter, where most of the NFTs we'll be talking about in this podcast are on the Ethereum blockchain. And that space was really hot in the 2017, 2018 time period. And Larva Labs, one of the NFT creators, had this CryptoPunks collection that they released, which are now gaining traction, 4 years after the fact. And there's even also uncovered in that sort of genesis of when the NFTs started getting traction was these crypto kitties and then moon kitties and other things. Just these odd niche collections were released, getting uncovered now as people are doing some more exploration in some of the older dApps released on the Ethereum blockchain, and people are able to capture their own punk, kitty, moon, cat. They're able to then take, and we'll get into this a little bit more in the podcast. They're able to submit transactions to the blockchain, mint their own version of this NFT, which is simply calling a function on the blockchain, having it perform a transaction. You're able to then get one of these NFTs in your wallet, and then you're able to display it. So there's a lot to unpack right there.
No, there was a lot of buzzwords in the NFT world, which someone would have to, you would have to get used to the language and the glossary in order to understand. But I guess, like anything else, it seems in part, if someone is willing to pay for it, it has value. And very quickly, it seems like once this started, snowballing, then people are actually nervous if they don't have one. Or if you're on the artist side, they're concerned if they don't put one out. And some feel, frankly, very kind of forced and me too, if you will, while other ones seem a little bit more organic.
Yeah, like to go along with another buzzword, FOMO, the fear of missing out. A lot of people are running to this space and trying to monetize it. So it's really the Wild West right now. And a lot of these, you'll see some cleverly released NFT collections, and then other ones that are just sort of slapped together and put out there almost as a cash grab, I guess. So there's these organic ones that are more that are older, which are sort of being uncovered right now, and people are attributing value to it, and they're getting bid up, and it's almost it's a very hot market because this is a asset that has never been valued before. It's a brand new asset class, so no one knows how much these things are ultimately worth, and that's coming up against people saying, why would I pay anything of value for something that I can look at anytime I want to? So you'll see that these famous internet videos are getting NFTs made, or these TikTok videos are having NFTs. And people are right to ask, why would I pay money for something like this when anyone can observe it? But then at the same time, it's flipped around. It's like, well, you could say that really about anything. Why does someone pay money for comic books? Why does someone
go to a museum?
Baseball cards, go to a museum. Yeah. Why? Why does any of this have value? So it's almost as if the digital age is meeting the paper age, and as we're going through this transition, and especially as people are living more and more of their life digitally, either looking at their phone or in some of these 3D worlds that have been created where people have avatars and things like that, where they're spending more and more time online. The NFT is the dipping of the toe into assigning value to digital assets. And here it is a digital asset that has, it's verified, it's authentic because it's on the blockchain. There's a history for it. You can't forge an NFT.
By the way, just to tell you a quick story on the forgery, rewind back to post 1992, an NBA fan or basketball fan went onto eBay and bought what they thought was an authentic basketball signed by the entirety of the 1992 Dream Team. It was not. I will admit, I was the person. And honestly, for the price it was paid, I didn't think it was real, but it just shows you anyone can print a certificate of authenticity. And I know that if we talk about the print world, or we talk about basketball cards, baseball cards, they started to put the hologram logo on, which was not easily copied, still could be copied, but it wasn't worth the money to copy it, because then you weren't going to make any money on your knockoff. So that is how they did it now. We're basically taking that hologram sticker and turning it into something that is verifiable digitally, and really kind of inarguable as far as authenticity goes. So separating the value from it, it is certainly you can have more confidence and proof that the NFT that you have is in fact authentic.
Yeah, it's a digital certificate of authenticity that it's independently verified by the blockchain. So, like, just a misconception. Some people think they hear blockchain, they think Bitcoin. They're like, oh, that's illegal activity done on there. That's how criminals transact. And that's actually like the worst way for criminals to transact, because you're able to verify every single transaction that occurs on it. There's going to be a wallet that receives these coins. And so you can see where some of these ransomware attacks, where the hackers ask to be paid in Bitcoin, you can see the money go different places, and it's just a matter of connecting that wallet to the correct person. So it's actually really bad if you want to do anything, if you want to hide your transactions. So that's something that the blockchain offers. But then when we're talking about NFTs and how they're used, um, the concept of them went back to like the original idea of Bitcoin, and it even predates it, where people were talking about having these trading cards available in a computer somehow, like the idea of bringing that to computers. And it really became possible with using a blockchain that supports smart contracts. And that's it's really just logic. So if then statements, or just conditions being met, and then something being performed as a result of that condition. And a smart contract enabled blockchain allows for these minting of NFTs, minting being the creating of NFTs. It's just something it's a programmable blockchain that allowed for these tokens, which are then linked to the NFT on them.
Now, Joe, I have a question. Something that you just mentioned made me think of, when you talk about kind of transitioning from one era or one world to another. When you look at certain industry segments, like the music business, which went digital, and then the question was, well, it completely changed the game of recording and producing music. And of course, artists talk about how little they could get reimbursed every time a song is played on one of the online platforms. So it's very, it's a you see something that has billions of plays, but if you were to look at the contractual payment or royalty to the artist, it's certainly not billions of dollars. So I'm just wondering if part of the transition was finding another way to make something special to people, finding another way to make them feel that they are connecting in a certain way, like in music, where it's all digital now, but you used to have a record album with liner notes and lyric sheets, and you would take that out and you would kind of possess it and have it. I just wonder if not only are the NFTs finding a way to monetize it differently, but also giving people the feeling of, at least for collectors and people who are actual fans, I'm putting aside people who are just speculating in it, but for an actual fan, actually having something, even if it is still digital, ownership in part of what they love.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, Mike. It really is about ownership with this. You're able to go to your wallet and say, I own a copy of this. Right now, we're in a stage of technology where people aren't buying music anymore. What they're doing is buying subscriptions to services that allow them to stream more music than ever imaginable. Like, they can listen to any song they ever want, and you're paying for access to these collections rather than buying this particular album like you would before. And there's a danger in that, in censorship of some of this, the content or these songs. If you don't own a copy of it, you can't prevent any of the streaming services from perhaps censoring a song or removing a song from its platform. So that's something that's we're going to have to wrestle with as we move into this new technological point of things where people do want to own copies of things. How can that be done in a way that the person feels that they're getting value from it? And at the same time, with artists, they want to make sure that they're compensated correctly for their music. Because when music was able to be converted into files, put on computers, there was Napster and file sharing sites. So one Metallica MP3 all of a sudden could be shared all around the world. As soon as there was as soon as it was digitized, there was a way to make multiple copies of that. And there was no way to know how many there could be. You could reproduce as many as you would want. But now there's this technology out there which will create unique digital files. So that's sort of taking a step back. That's what NFTs allow you to do. And because you're able to have this programmability into the creation of them, there's ways of artists creating an NFT and then being able to receive, as part of the smart contract for that NFT, royalties from later sales of that NFT. So that's sort of what's being experimented with right now.
Well, let's talk about an issue though on let's tie in a little bit the IP side. And if you are in fact, the author or creator, you would own the copyright in whatever the work of authorship is. So you set it in copyrights, you have rights when you set it in a tangible medium. Let's say you set your art or your music or whatever happens to be the subject of the NFT in the token. When you transfer that to someone, you're not transferring the copyrights in it unless there is some agreement or terms of service or terms of use that say that. So it's really no different than when you purchase a photograph. You don't purchase the rights to reproduce or the rights to make copies. You purchase the copyrights in your copy of that painting or photograph or song. So when we're buying music or downloading it online from any streaming service, we're not owning the copyright. So, and I wonder if people who have certain NFTs would be shocked to find out that the author could just do another run of the same NFT.
Yeah, it's very NFT by NFT basis. You need to be very careful about what the terms are, what site you're using for the purchasing of each of these NFTs, because it really is a brand new space. There aren't agreed upon language for some of these different transfers. So you really need to be careful about what you're buying. And then also on the creator side, what you're putting in your NFTs, because some of the new cases that are coming out or just different articles about issues, if you can create an NFT, but that doesn't, just because you created something, there could be a copyright issue that you're stepping on someone's copyright in your creation of that NFT itself.
Sure. If you're anyone other than Disney and you create a Mickey Mouse based NFT and some buyer pays a significant amount of money for it, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost the value and the right to really even have it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I'd like to run through some of the NFTs out there, just on the fun side of the podcast. We had a lot of technology, but there's a lot of art. There's a lot of music. There's the NBA Top Shot. Are you familiar with these?
Yeah, so I got in line for these a couple times and the website just kept crashing. So I do not own any NBA Top Shot cards at this time. But one of my friends who's also involved in this space with me did get in and was able to buy a couple of the different packs that they have.
Well, let's say what do you actually get though? What are you buying? What is it?
Sure. Yeah. So uh and I watched the unboxing of this too, similar to how you would see kids on YouTube open up different presents. It's packaged together quite nicely, and you're buying a digital highlight or a highlight of an NBA play in a short clip form. So it's basically short clips from NBA games or what you're purchasing, and it's at the creator here has a license with the NBA to release this product, and every so many weeks they'll have a different series where they'll have, much like any sort of trading card that you have for some of the sports, different tiers. Like, this is a non-rare tier, this is a rare tier, this is an ultra rare tier of different highlights. So they've listed all the different highlight clips in each of the collections, and you know how many are being created for each of the clips based on whether it's a common, rare, or ultra rare highlight that you're purchasing.
But the digital card that you get, so it's basically a moving trading card. It's a trading card. By the way, I hate to do a Harry Potter reference, but it does remind me of photographs and newspapers in the Harry Potter world where it's moving images that are on kind of a 2D.
That's a good way to think about it. And it's on this particular NBA Top Shot platform where you would see your collection. That'll change based on NFT to NFT. So you log into their site. They show you each of the highlights that you own, and it has a marketplace on there also where you're able to purchase additional highlights, trade your highlight for someone else's highlight, and based on the rarity of the card, they're worth different amounts of money. Also, coming in back to almost like dollar collecting or some card collecting, each of the highlights is given a number. So, say you have a number 23 highlight of a LeBron James highlight, that would be worth more money than number 22 or 24, because 23 is a number that he wears. So, like that also goes into the thought process with the collecting here.
Right. Okay. So I do see, I mean, this would be a great year if you're into it to get some of these 76er Top Shot collections, which are available. But again, I do understand the appeal. And in fact, if you say, well, what about old fashioned, trading cards? They don't do anything. So at least here, this is moving for 5 or 6 seconds. Yeah. You're seeing an entire play. But it is funny though, some of the plays some are dunks and some are passes, but some are really just someone dribbling down the court.
Exactly. Yes. Some of the highlights are so bad, and some of the players featured in the highlights also bad. We saw that when going through this pack that my friend got. We were laughing at some of the digital highlights that they were giving out, because it was the equivalent of getting like the worst players when you're opening up baseball cards
Right,
as a
right.
kid. But then with this platform, one thing I want to call out, all these huge numbers are being thrown around for this card's worth that and this much money. It's centralized with this the provider, and it's very hard. The liquidity, you being able to get actual dollars in your hand from each of these is still at a very early stage of things, and with certain withdrawal limits to a certain day. So a buyer needs to be very aware of getting into and then out of these NFTs, no matter what you're buying.
Yeah, I don't really. I never see people discussing the getting out, but I see the discussing getting in. But here's a really interesting one that is actually tied to the world of patents, so perfect for an IP goes pop topic. So Nike has a patent on something called the crypto kicks, and this is interesting, Joe, because this is tying something in the real world that is already a collectible to a second thing in the digital world that is now an NFT collectible. So it's tying a specific collectible sneaker to a basically a virtual trading card of that same sneaker. So you now have the NFT that is kind of parallel to the collectible sneakers that you have. And again, another one where I don't know if a lot of people are actually wearing these collectible sneakers or just possessing them. And I don't know who wants to buy someone else's sneakers unless it's an auction, of someone famous signing their game sneakers. But assuming you're collecting the sneaker, you would also now have kind of a matched. I mean, this is covered by a patent, a matched up digital footwear to match your real life footwear. And again, it's through NFT.
It's such a nascent technology, and companies are figuring out how to best leverage it. But yeah, that's certainly something to do. And then you think about different games. like Roblox or something like that. Like when you talk about something that's a bit more open source rather than those two examples, and there's a digital community, you would want to know whether this is like an authentic version of whatever digital item you have. This would provide you a way to do that.
Well, could I interest you or anyone else in the NFT trading cards featuring images from William Shatner's personal life and career throughout his life, now available in various NFT packs? And these are the kind of things where, you know, I believe, I mean, I'm a big believer in fan service. So I have not seen anything in the Marvel universe right now. I assume it's coming in many different ways. Maybe there are, and I just haven't seen it. But I do think it is a service to have something for people to connect with, and I think that they do allow this connection. And as you said, you can prove it up in a way, which is, who knows how many kids walked out of Comic Cons, especially in the early Comic Cons, thinking that they had a collectible when they didn't.
Yeah. And here's another thing. Like, if in the example of going to a Comic Con, like what you could do is even give NFT badges out to people as they were going to the Comic Con, that they could then they'd receive something from actually going to it physically. They could go home to their computer, get an NFT from having gone there, and then be able to display that with their digital life, like with on their Twitter or on Facebook. And it'd be a way to verify that, yeah, I actually did do that. So that's sort of how this can be leveraged in the future. There's so much junk out there, though, right now. It's so early phase. Most of these things are going to be totally worthless, but then there are going to be those things that stand the test of time.
But I mean, how is that any different? I'm sure on the shelves next to Adventure Comics 1, or whichever one featured Superman. Was it 1? I don't even think it was number.
Action Comics.
Action Comics. Famous cover with, I think, Superman lifting a taxi cab or something like that.
Yep. Hit and thrown into a stone.
Yeah. So I'm sure there was another comic next to that comic on the spinner rack. And I'm sure that, here we are having it pervaded the pop culture to such a degree that I have memorized that cover as you have. And I'm sure that all the other ones on that spinner rack are long forgotten. So really nothing has, for all the technology, that hasn't changed as far as what will be the one. Who would have thought that sneakers became a collectible to the extent that they have, where there's literally an app that you have to click at a certain time to even purchase them. And again, these are the difference between the other 30 sneakers you have, and this one might be a slight color combination. They're the same sneaker version, let's say.
And Mike, let me just take this one more step further, because we're talking about digital assets here, digital collectibles. What would it be worth if someone famous had this digital collectible before you did? So say a Hollywood star, or a very famous person had one, decided to sell it, and then all of a sudden that NFT would have more value than another one due to who owned it before them. Much like, oh, these are George Washington's wooden teeth, something like you would know for certain that someone famous had this. There would all of a sudden be a premium attached to something that's already a collectible, and you would know by the blockchain that is how the ownership went for that.
And you look on the wall of a Planet Hollywood, for example, all the memorabilia. It has value because it could have been in the background of a movie sitting next to an extra, but just the extrinsic nature of it being in a movie, a famous movie, again, imbues it with this kind of value. And what you just said is, here we have this kind of whisper down the lane where you could actually prove where the whisper came from, and that's going to skyrocket the value. I mean, who wouldn't want to have that connection? Not only, let's say you already collect whatever the NFT represents, and it was also in the possession of someone famous and kind of passed along. So are we going to see are there going to be NFT concerts where only those who kind of pay the super premium are even allowed to participate, and then no one else will be able to view it or see it, or you get to say I was there, because now people could say they were at Woodstock. You really couldn't prove it unless they're on the album cover, unless it's I just saw an article about the two people on the cover, or two of the people that are easily recognized on the album cover of Woodstock. And yeah, sure, we know you were there, but what about there's a guy covered in mud behind you? How do we know who that guy is? So I think the traceability is a big deal. And I think we're going to see more bigger, I'm going to coin this phrase right now. We're going to see NFT events. We're going to see entire shows or athletic events, let's say a wrestling event, or you're going to see, like what used to be pay-per-view might be NFT per-view now. And other people could say they saw it, but they didn't see it live, or let's say a heavyweight boxing match, which is a lot of excitement around it. You could have an NFT heavyweight boxing match, theoretically.
You're really on the right track, though, with it, Mike. People are exploring putting season tickets for sporting teams, creating them as NFTs, and allowing basically having them replace a ticket to an event, because you would be certain that there would be absolutely no forgery. You can't sell an inauthentic ticket this way. You would have the ownership back to the beginning. And what it would also allow for is the original creator, being the team selling the season ticket, they could create it in such a way that each subsequent sale of it, they would get compensated for. So as we're trying to wrap our heads around this whole concept, it's like, okay, they're selling it to the secondary market. That person then sells it to the person ultimately going to the game. But that secondary sale, they could recapture some of that based on how they're creating these unique tokens on the blockchain in the first place.
So, Joe, first of all, I just want to thank you you did a phenomenal job explaining the technology here. I know I was curious about it. I know our listeners were curious about it. We got some email to the podcast about, doing a recording about this topic, but really talking about the basics. So thank you so much, as always, for joining. Thank you for explaining it. By the way, for listeners, the NFT of this podcast will be available for auction at an extremely high price. Joe, any last words on your side?
No, it's just be careful with what you're creating. If you're making these NFTs and if you're buying them, make sure you're reading the terms on each of the sites in which you are purchasing them. Because when dealing in the blockchain space, the beauty of it is there is no need for a trusted intermediary when dealing with these transactions. So you really need to be extremely careful, because no one will be there to. You need to be your own advocate here and look out for yourself, because there's no one who's going to be able to get your money back.
And I will say on the creator side, and Joe, you mentioned it too, make sure on the creator side you're not giving away rights that you do not mean to give away on that side, and that you're sure about your terms and conditions again. So that wraps it for this week on IP Goes Pop, the ABCs of NFTs. For Joe and myself and everyone at Volpe Koenig, thank you for joining. Here's hoping that you find things of value that bring pleasure to your life. We will see you on the next episode of IP Goes Pop.
The IP Goes Pop podcast series is created and produced by Volpe Koenig, an intellectual property law firm based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Visit us at vklaw.com.